The lobby of Hargrove Pinnacle Hotel smelled like money and contempt. Polished marble floors, brass fixtures that caught the light just so, a reception desk carved from something that cost more than Owen Vance made in a year. He knew the moment he walked through those revolving doors that the woman behind the desk was already deciding what kind of person he was. She was right, and she was wrong, both at once. Owen pushed through anyway, Daisy's small hand tucked inside his. She was 7, wearing her best dress, the blue one with the white collar that her mother had picked out 2 Christmases ago, the last Christmas they'd had together. One of her white socks had slipped down inside her shoe, and she kept stopping to yank it back up. But she didn't complain. She never complained. That was the part that broke him sometimes, how quiet she'd gotten since Caroline died. "It's fancy, Daddy," she whispered. "Real fancy bug." The folder in Owen's other hand was thick. Pages inside pages. A letter with a gold seal, documents that a paralegal in Columbus had spent 3 weeks tracking down from a probate court that barely remembered the case existed. He'd driven 4 hours to get here. He hadn't slept more than 5 in the last 2 nights. There was grease under his thumbnail from the alternator job he'd finished at 11 p.m. because he couldn't afford to turn down work. Not now, not with everything riding on the next 20 minutes. The receptionist's name tag said Brooke. Her smile said something else entirely. "Welcome to Hargrove Pinnacle. Do you have a reservation?" Her eyes moved the same way they always did. The Carhartt jacket, the jeans with the worn knee, the little girl in the nice dress that didn't quite match the rest of the picture. Back to the jacket. "I'm here to see Leonard Hargrove." Something shifted behind Brooke's eyes. Controlled, practiced. "Mr. Hargrove is currently in a private meeting. If you'd like to leave your name and a contact number, it's about the Whitmore acquisition." A beat. Just one, but Owen caught it. "I'm not aware of any." "The closing is scheduled for 2 o'clock this afternoon. It's 11:40 now. I need to speak with him before that happens." Owen kept his voice level. He'd rehearsed this in the truck, all 4 hours, talking through it while Daisy slept in the back seat with her stuffed elephant tucked under her chin. "Stay calm. Don't let them see you sweat. My name is Owen Vance. I'm a co-trustee of the Vance Family Land Trust. The Whitmore parcel is part of that trust, and I have documentation proving it. This deal cannot legally close without my signature." Brooke picked up her phone. Owen watched her talk in low tones, watched her nod twice, watched her face do the thing faces did when they were deciding how much trouble something was going to be. She hung up. "Someone from Mr. Hargrove's team will be down shortly. If you could just, we'll wait right here." Daisy pressed close to his leg. She'd done that a lot lately, this leaning in, like she needed to confirm he was still solid. He put his hand on her shoulder. She didn't pull away. They waited. The lobby moved around them. Guests in expensive clothes crossing to elevators. A bellman pushing a brass luggage cart. 2 women in blazers, talking near a cluster of potted palms. Nobody looked directly at Owen, but he could feel them not looking, which was its own kind of looking. After 8 minutes, a man in a charcoal suit came down the stairs. Mid-50s, silver hair trimmed close, the particular bearing of someone who'd spent decades being the most important person in every room he entered. Leonard Hargrove's chief of operations, based on the photo Owen had found online. His name was Douglas Pratt, and the look on his face when he spotted Owen said he'd already made up his mind about this visit. "Mr. Vance?" Pratt didn't offer his hand. "I understand you're claiming some sort of interest in the Whitmore property." "Not claiming. I have documentation." "I see." Pratt glanced at Daisy, then back at Owen with the particular expression of a man who considered the presence of a child to be a tactical maneuver. "Why don't we step into a side room where you can? I'd like to speak directly with Leonard Hargrove." "Mr. Hargrove is preparing for a significant business closing and cannot be interrupted. He's about to commit to a transaction that will expose him to legal challenge. I'd think he'd want to know that." Pratt's expression didn't change. It was one of those faces that had stopped moving a long time ago. "If you have concerns about the transaction, the appropriate channel would be to contact our legal team and file." "Your legal team has had 6 weeks, Owen said. "I sent 3 certified letters. I made 9 phone calls. Every single one was redirected, ignored, or bounced back. I'm here in person because every other option has been closed to me." Daisy tugged his hand. He glanced down. Her sock had fallen again. She was working it up with her other foot, trying not to draw attention to herself. Pratt smiled the way people smiled when they'd already decided. I'm afraid I can't help you today, Mr. Vance. If you'd like to leave those documents. They stay with me. Then I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Owen didn't move. Pratt's eyes went to someone over Owen's shoulder, and Owen heard the footsteps before he saw them. Two men in security uniforms materialized from somewhere near the elevator bank, both big, both practiced. Sir, the closer one had a flat, professional voice. I need to ask you to come with me. I'm exercising my legal right as a co-trustee of a registered land trust to halt an unlawful transaction. Sir. Daisy made a sound. Not quite a word, just a small involuntary note of fear. Owen squeezed her hand without looking at her. Okay, he said quietly. Okay. He let them walk him toward the doors. Daisy stayed glued to his side, her white sock sliding down again inside her shoe, her free hand clutching her stuffed elephant, which she'd insisted on bringing because she always brought it to important things. The revolving doors were right there. Outside, the street waited, and the 4-hour drive back to Millhaven, and the garage that needed a new compressor, and the casserole Mrs. Dempsey from next door had left in his fridge that he kept meaning to eat and never did. Then a voice cut across the lobby like something thrown. Douglas. Everyone stopped. The woman who'd spoken was coming down the main staircase. 60, maybe 65, with silver hair pulled back in a way that looked effortless and wasn't. Dark blazer, the kind of clothes that announced rather than displayed. She moved like someone who had never once in her life needed to raise her voice to be heard, and so didn't bother with it now. Leonard Hargrove's wife. Owen recognized her from the hotel's website, Eleanor Hargrove, co-founder, board member, the name that appeared before Leonard's on most of the original incorporation documents. She reached the bottom of the stairs and looked at Owen the way people looked at things they were genuinely trying to understand. Who is this? Pratt shifted. A man claiming to have some issue with the Whitmore transaction. I was just having security. I can see what you were doing. Eleanor's eyes stayed on Owen. What's your name? Owen Vance. And what is that? She nodded toward the folder. Documentation. A land trust established in 1988 by my grandfather, Russell Vance. The trust holds deed authority over the Whitmore parcel, which is the parcel your husband is purchasing this afternoon for $8 million. Under the terms of the trust, any sale or transfer of deed rights requires co-trustee approval. I'm the co-trustee, and I have not given approval. A long, quiet moment. Pratt started to speak. Eleanor raised one finger without looking at him, and he stopped. You sent letters, she said. It wasn't a question. 3, certified, and 9 phone calls over 6 weeks. Eleanor turned slowly to look at Pratt. Something in her face had gone very still. He sent letters, Douglas. Pratt's composure flickered. Mrs. Hargrove, the legal teams reviewed the chain of title on the Whitmore property and found no encumbrances. Then they missed something. Eleanor looked back at Owen. Come with me. Pratt stepped forward. Eleanor, the closing is in. I'm aware of when the closing is. She looked at Daisy for the first time. Her expression changed slightly. Not much, but Owen caught it. Is this your daughter? Yes, ma'am. Daisy. Eleanor crouched, actually crouched, in her good blazer right there in the lobby to look at Daisy at eye level. Hello, Daisy. That's a fine elephant. Daisy blinked. His name is Biscuit. Perfect name. Eleanor straightened. She looked at Owen. Bring her. There's no reason she needs to stand out here. She walked toward a hallway off the main lobby. Owen followed. Behind him, he heard Pratt on his phone, voice tight and quiet. The room Eleanor led them to was small and spare. A conference table, 6 chairs, a window looking out on the hotel's service alley. No artwork, no marble. A working room. Eleanor set her own leather notepad on the table and sat down across from Owen as he settled Daisy into the chair beside him. Show me, Eleanor said. Owen opened the folder. He'd been over these documents so many times they felt like part of his own hands now. The original trust deed from 1988. The amendment from 1994, when his grandfather had added the co-trustee provision after a falling out with his business partner. The probate transfer from 2019, when his grandfather died and the trust passed jointly to Owen's father, and then, after his father's death 2 years later, entirely to Owen. He laid them out in order. Eleanor read without speaking. She had reading glasses on a chain around her neck, and she used them, bending close to the pages with the focused attention of someone who hadn't made it to where she was by trusting other people's summaries. Daisy, beside Owen, had quietly taken Biscuit the elephant and was walking him along the edge of the table in very small steps. She made no noise about it, just the elephant's soft legs, barely moving. "The Whitmore parcel," Eleanor said without looking up. "Parcel 8 on this plat map?" "Yes, and you're saying your grandfather held deed rights, co-deed rights, shared with Whitmore's original family trust. When the Whitmore heirs dissolved their trust in 2011, my grandfather's rights weren't extinguished. They just weren't disclosed in the subsequent transactions. It's been compounding through every sale since." Owen kept his voice steady. "I didn't know about any of this until 8 months ago. I found a box of my grandfather's papers in the back of my father's storage unit. Old documents, a letter he'd left for my dad. Inside it was a copy of the original deed." Eleanor set down the page she was reading. "And your father? Died 2 years ago. He never knew either. My grandfather was. He didn't talk much about his business dealings. He was a private man." Owen paused. He left a note in the box explaining why he hadn't told anyone. He thought it would only matter if someone ever tried to take the land in a way that hurt the people who lived near it. Hurt them how? Owen took a breath. Here was the part that people in suits usually stopped listening to, right around here. Millhaven Township, where I live, 38 miles north of here. The Whitmore parcel isn't just land. It's the watershed for most of the eastern part of the county. The creek that feeds 3 township wells runs through the middle of it. If your husband develops it the way he's planning, luxury hospitality, which is what the proposal says, the runoff will contaminate those wells inside of a decade. The hydrologist who assessed it said maybe less. Silence. 3 wells, Eleanor repeated. 2 of them serve about 4,000 people directly. The third one is the backup for the county emergency water system. Owen met her eyes. $8 million is a good deal for your husband. I understand why he wants it. But I spent the last 8 months trying to get someone in this building to read a letter, and now I'm sitting here while security guards wait in the hallway. So I'm asking you, in front of your documents and mine, to look at this honestly. Eleanor looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at Daisy, who had stopped walking Biscuit along the table and was looking back at Eleanor with the open, uncomplicated gaze of a 7-year-old who hadn't yet learned to armor her face. How long has she been without her mother? Eleanor asked quietly. Owen stilled. 2 years. I'm sorry. Thank you. Eleanor stood. Wait here. Don't let anyone take those documents. She left. The door clicked shut behind her. Owen sat very still. Daisy climbed into his lap, which she rarely did anymore. She was working on being grown up. She'd told him seriously. She was almost 8, and settled there with Biscuit across her knees. Are we in trouble? She asked. No, Bug. We're not in trouble. That man in the gray suit looked mad. Some people look like that when things aren't going the way they planned. She thought about this. Like when you burned the grilled cheese last month? Despite everything, Owen laughed. Just once, low and short, but real. Yeah? Sort of like that. They waited 15 minutes. Owen counted them without meaning to. Then the door opened, and it wasn't Eleanor who came in. It was Leonard Hargrove himself. Owen had seen photos of him online, but they all seemed to have been taken at angles that flattered. In person, Leonard was shorter than he'd expected, with the kind of broad, confident posture that men developed when they'd been right about enough things to stop second-guessing themselves. He was 68. He'd built 3 hotels from the ground up. He'd given his name to a business school wing in Columbus, a pediatric unit in Cleveland. He was, by most accounts, not a bad man. He came in alone, closed the door behind him, sat down at the head of the table in the chair Eleanor had vacated. He looked at Owen for a long moment. Then he looked at the documents spread across the table. Eleanor says you drove 4 hours, he said. From Millhaven. She also says you used to be an engineer. Owen nodded. Automotive, Ford Powertrain Division. Left when my wife got sick. Needed to be home. He paused. I run a garage now. Doing what? Fixing cars, mostly older ones. I'm good at it. Leonard studied him. It wasn't an unfriendly study. My legal team is telling me your documentation has holes. Ambiguous language in the 1994 amendment. Arguable chain of title. They're not wrong that there are arguments, Owen said. But they're also not wrong that those arguments would take 18 months and a significant amount of money to litigate. And at the end of that, an appeals court in the 3rd District tends to read co-trustee provisions strictly. Owen kept his voice level. I'm not trying to shake you down. I've got nothing to gain from this parcel. I've never seen it in person. My grandfather left it to me to protect, and I'm trying to do that. The wells. Leonard picked up the hydrologist's report from the stack. He read for a moment, set it back down. This assessment, independent firm out of Cincinnati, I paid for it myself. Took 3 months of savings. You can commission your own. Leonard looked at him. Something had shifted in the room. Owen could feel it. The way you felt when a conversation changed tracks underneath you. My wife, Leonard said quietly, has been telling me for 6 months that this acquisition was moving too fast, that we were skipping steps. He set his hands flat on the table. I told her we'd done the due diligence. You did the standard due diligence. Nobody does a deed search that goes back to 1988 without a specific reason to. No. Leonard exhaled. No, they don't. He was quiet for a moment. If I walk away from this closing today, I forfeit a significant earnest money deposit. I know, and I have partners who are going to be significantly unhappy. I know that too. Leonard looked at him for a long time. Owen had gotten good at sitting with silence. He'd had 2 years to practice. What do you want? Leonard asked finally. And don't tell me you don't want anything, because everybody wants something. You drove 4 hours in a work jacket. You came here with your daughter instead of a lawyer. You've been trying to stop this deal for 6 weeks. You want something. What is it? Owen looked at the table for a moment. Then he said, a conservation easement on the watershed corridor. Legal restriction on development within a half-mile of the creek, recorded and binding. Leonard frowned. That would significantly restrict the parcel's development potential. Yes, the investment math changes substantially. Yes, the partners would never. Leonard stopped, restarted. It would be a very different deal. It would be a different deal, Owen agreed. Whether it's still a good one is something you'd have to decide. Silence. Daisy had fallen asleep in Owen's lap. He hadn't noticed it happen. One moment she was listening, and then she just wasn't anymore. Just gone soft and heavy against his chest, the way children did, this absolute and unself-conscious surrender to sleep. Biscuit had slid sideways in her arms. Leonard looked at her for a moment. His face did something Owen couldn't quite read. My youngest daughter is 40, Leonard said. She lives in San Francisco. We talk on holidays mostly. He said it without apparent self-pity. Just fact. Her mother, Eleanor's our second marriage. My first wife was similar in some ways. Very direct. She'd have driven 4 hours too. Owen didn't say anything. Leonard stood. I need to make some calls. Will you stay? We'll stay. Leonard left. This time the door didn't quite click shut. Owen sat with Daisy asleep in his lap, in a sparse conference room in a hotel lobby, in a city he didn't know, holding a folder of old papers that his grandfather had never told anyone about until he was already gone. Outside, somewhere down the hall, the 2 o'clock closing was either happening or it wasn't. His phone had 3 text messages from his mechanic back in Millhaven asking about a parts order. The casserole was still in his fridge. He needed to replace the brake pads on a 94 F-150 tomorrow morning at 7. He was so tired he could feel it in his back teeth. He didn't move. He held his daughter and he waited. It was Eleanor who came back first, 40 minutes later. She came in quietly, which was a different kind of entrance than the one she'd made in the lobby. And she sat down not at the head of the table but in the chair beside Owen, which felt deliberate. The closing has been postponed, she said. Leonard called the partners. It didn't go well. She folded her hands on the table, but he called them. Owen exhaled. Just once, slow. The legal team is going to review everything over the next 2 weeks, Eleanor continued. There will likely be a negotiation about the easement terms. Leonard's property attorney is thorough. He's going to look for every arguable point in that 1994 amendment, Ed. I know. You'll want a real estate attorney of your own. I know that too. I've got a name from the probate office in Columbus. I just haven't been able to afford the retainer yet. Eleanor looked at him steadily. Send me the name. I'll have our firm pay the retainer and deduct it from any settlement costs on our end if this goes to formal mediation. That's not charity, she said, before Owen could speak. It's ensuring the other party can actually participate in negotiations. Otherwise, it's not a negotiation, it's a dictation. Owen nodded. His throat was tight in a way he didn't entirely understand. The watershed, Eleanor said. You said 4,000 people, give or take. Some of them have private wells, but the township system serves the largest concentration, and the backup system covers the whole county in emergencies. Eleanor was quiet for a moment. Leonard proposed this parcel for development because it's beautiful land. That's always been his instinct. He finds beautiful land and builds something on it. She paused. He's not a bad man. I don't think he is. He just sometimes forgets to ask who else is living near the beautiful land. Yes. She almost smiled. It was a complicated almost smile, the kind that had a lot of years of something behind it. You said your grandfather left a letter, explaining why he'd kept this private. He did. Do you mind if I ask what it said? Owen shifted Daisy slightly, her weight redistributing against his chest. He looked at the window, at the gray service alley outside, at nothing. He said he'd bought into the Whitmore parcel in 1988 because he thought he'd get rich on it. He was trying to get rich on a lot of things in 1988. None of them worked. Owen paused. But over the years, he started going out there, walking the land. He watched the creek and watched the deer trails and watched the way the water table held, even in dry summers. He said it taught him something. He wasn't specific about what. He looked back at Eleanor. The letter said he kept the deed rights because some things shouldn't be for whoever gets there fastest with the most money. He wanted someone in our family to be able to say no, if it came to that. Eleanor looked at Daisy sleeping against Owen's chest. Your daughter looks like she trusts you completely, she said. Owen's jaw tightened. She's all I've got. Then, she's quite a lot. Leonard came back at 2:30. He sat at the head of the table with the posture of someone who'd spent an unpleasant hour on the phone and had come out the other side of it, still standing. The partners are restructuring their stake, he said. 2 of them are out entirely. The third is willing to proceed under modified terms. He set a legal pad on the table. On it, he'd handwritten something. He slid it toward Owen. This is what we're proposing as a starting framework for the easement. Owen read it. It was better than he'd expected. Not everything he'd wanted, but more than he'd thought Leonard would offer in a first conversation after a day like this one. The buffer's 300 meters, Owen said. The hydrologist recommended 400. We'll negotiate on the buffer. I'll want a third-party environmental review built into the deed restriction. Leonard nodded once, reasonable. Owen set the legal pad back on the table. Daisy stirred, made a small sound, resettled. He held her steady. I want to be clear about something, Owen said. I'm not trying to prevent you from using this land. It's beautiful, like your wife said. Build something on it. Just build it right. Build it in a way that doesn't end up in the water of people who never had a say in what got built. Leonard looked at him for a long time. His face had a weight to it now that hadn't been there when he'd walked in. My father was a plumber, Leonard said finally. Grew up in Youngstown. He would have had a lot to say about a man who drove 4 hours to protect somebody else's water. Probably would have said it louder than was polite. Probably. Leonard almost smiled. Didn't quite. 2 weeks. We'll have our attorneys reach out to yours. If your documentation holds, and I think it will, we're looking at a negotiated easement agreement rather than litigation. Nobody wants litigation. Agreed. Owen stood. Daisy woke up the moment he shifted, the way she always did, instantly alert, looking around to figure out where they were. Did it work? She asked. We'll see, Owen said. That means yes, usually. He looked down at her, this small, serious person who read his hesitations like weather. Yeah, it means yes, usually. Eleanor was at the door. She opened it for them. In the hallway, Douglas Pratt stood with his arms crossed and an expression like a man doing long division in his head. Douglas, Eleanor said without looking at him, reschedule the closing. New date TBD. Get the legal team the updated documents by end of day. Pratt's mouth opened and closed. Today, Douglas. He left. Eleanor walked them back through the lobby. At the revolving doors, she stopped. Daisy, she said. Daisy looked up. Take care of that elephant. He seems like the dependable type. Daisy considered this with the gravity of a small person evaluating important information. He is. He came with me when my mom died, too. Eleanor held very still. Owen watched the thing that moved across her face. Quick and quiet and real. Then he's an excellent elephant, she said. And you're an excellent keeper. Outside, the afternoon air was cold and bright, and Owen's truck was parked 2 blocks down on a meter he was 40 minutes past due on. There was a ticket under the wiper blade. He took it without looking at it and opened the passenger door for Daisy and buckled her in while she arranged biscuit on her knees with the seriousness of someone settling an important matter. He got in, put his hands on the wheel, and sat there for a moment. Through the window, he could see the glass front of the hotel. Somewhere inside, Leonard Hargrove was on the phone, rearranging things. Somewhere inside, Eleanor Hargrove was reading his grandfather's documents again, her reading glasses on their chain, bending close to pages that had spent 30 years in a storage unit waiting for someone to open the box. Owen started the truck. "Daddy," Daisy said. "Yeah, Bug. Grandpa Russell put the papers in the box for us, right? Because he knew one day we'd need them." "That's what I think." She was quiet for a moment, the way she got quiet when she was actually working something through and not just filling silence. "That was nice of him," she said finally, thinking about people who weren't even born yet. Owen pulled out of the parking spot. The city moved past them, building by building, giving way slowly to highway, and then to the kind of landscape Owen knew. Flat and wide and honest, fields still brown with the tail end of winter, sky the pale silver of early March. Daisy fell asleep again before they hit the county line. She was good at that. She inherited it from her mother, who could fall asleep anywhere and wake up ready for whatever came next. Owen drove. He thought about his grandfather walking a piece of land for years, watching a creek, understanding something without being able to say what it was. He thought about a letter in a box. He thought about 4,000 people who would never know there had been a morning in a hotel lobby where their water almost changed. He thought about Leonard Hargrove looking at Daisy sleeping in Owen's lap and going quiet in a way that said something had shifted. He thought about how sometimes the world contained, buried in it, the exact document you needed, left there by someone who'd thought ahead. How sometimes the piece that fit was already in the box. You just had to be the one to drive 4 hours and open it. His phone rang. The Columbus attorney. He answered it on speaker quietly so he wouldn't wake Daisy. "Mr. Vance, I heard from the Hargrove team already. Their counsel reached out." A pause. "What exactly did you say to these people?" "The truth, mostly." Another pause. "Their proposed framework isn't bad. There are some points we'll push back on, the buffer distance in particular, but this is workable. I think we can have a draft agreement within 30 days. "What about the retainer?" Owen said. "Eleanor Hargrove mentioned, already arranged." The attorney sounded mildly astonished. "Paid this afternoon. I've never had that happen before." Owen exhaled. Okay. The attorney laughed slightly. "You just walked into one of the largest real estate transactions in the county with no legal representation, armed with a 40-year-old deed and a hydrologist's report, and stopped it cold. Are you always like this?" Owen glanced in the mirror at Daisy, head tilted against the car door, biscuit drooping in her arms. "I had help," he said. He hung up. The road stretched ahead, flat and familiar, carrying him home. Millhaven was quiet when he arrived, the way it was always quiet at dusk on weekdays. A handful of cars at the gas station, the elementary school dark, the main street lit up in 2s and 3s. He parked behind the garage, carried Daisy inside still sleeping, got her shoes off without waking her, tucked biscuit in beside her the way she liked. He ate the casserole, standing at the kitchen counter, cold, because he was too tired to heat it and too hungry to care. It was good. Mrs. Dempsey was a better cook than he'd ever been. Afterward, he sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and his grandfather's original letter, which he'd taken out of the folder and read at least a dozen times over the past 8 months. The handwriting was careful and a little stiff, the way people wrote when they knew the words mattered. If you're reading this, something happened with the Whitmore land. I'm sorry I didn't explain all of this sooner. There were years when I thought it didn't matter, and then years when I thought it was too late to say. Funny how those two things can take up a whole life. The creek is worth protecting. That's all I know for certain. I could never make much else come out right, but that one thing I know. Take care of your people, and take care of the water. That's all there is. Owen folded the letter carefully and put it back. Outside, through the kitchen window, he could see the garage. His grandfather's tools inside it, rearranged into his own system, his own rusted-out projects and good ones, and the ongoing list of what needed fixing. The light above the bay door was still on. He'd forgotten to turn it off. He thought about calling the garage, then didn't. He thought about the easement document that would arrive in the next 30 days, and the negotiation about the buffer and the third-party review, and all the procedural things that still had to happen before this was finished. He thought about Daisy's voice. That was nice of him. Thinking about people who weren't even born yet. Yeah, Owen thought. It really was. He finished his coffee, turned off the kitchen light, turned off the garage light from the switch by the back door. Through the small window above the sink, he could see a strip of night sky, clear and black and full of winter stars. Millhaven was quiet. The wells were still clean. Daisy was asleep with her elephant. For tonight, that was enough.